Welcome back to the channel and to level 1 of the financial sacrifices. If you haven't watched the introduction video for this series, basically the whole principle here is getting the most out of your money. It's about making your money go farther and then reducing the cost for the essential items that you need. So with that said, let's get started. Alright, level 1. This is the lowest effort, highest return for most people based on what I have seen. And that is cutting down on excess spending, which is disposable income spending, or some people call it discretional spending. But really, the two main pillars that I've consistently seen are 1, shopping, and then 2, entertainment expenses. So this could be like restaurants or going out to eat. It could be the movies, concerts, golfing, skiing. Anything that you do for like a fun entertainment activity falls into that category. Starting with shopping. Now, several of the people I personally know who have monetary problems, they are in that position because they have a shopping problem. Let me give you an example of someone I know, right? They always went clothes shopping, but they didn't go clothes shopping because they needed new clothes and their current ones were unwearable. It's because they wanted new clothes, they wanted a new style, and then shopping around and spending the time pursuing it just gave them something to do. I also know people who aimlessly browse Amazon or Etsy or any of those other sites just looking for stuff. They don't have a purpose, they just want stuff that looks neat, gadgets and trinkets. It's not something they need to survive, it doesn't really serve a concrete purpose in their life. They're literally going out and purchasing these things out of habit. Really what they're doing is they're trying to use their shopping habits as a placeholder. They're trying to get that temporary dopamine hit because of the perceived gratification of having something new, but ultimately it turns out to be a hollow experience because it's not something they needed and it's not something they truly enjoy. And for a lot of you, that probably sounds familiar. The real issue here is that this kind of purchasing becomes a habit, and like I said in the budgeting video that I linked below, you get into a cycle where you're consistently spending a lot more money than you actually thought you were long term. But this money spent doesn't contribute to your survival and doesn't tangibly improve your quality of life. So the worst case I have personally seen is a woman I knew, she actually had a whole room in her house that was unopened boxes and bags of clothes. She was a total shopaholic, she routinely bought more stuff for herself, and I actually went in and I opened just one of the bags. There was more than $400 of receipts in that one bag, and all of these clothes were never worn. They had been sitting there for a minimum of 6 months based on the receipt date, and she had literally an entire room filled of boxes and bags like this. The other type of chronic spender I see are the people who tell themselves, oh, I worked hard this week, I deserve this, I have earned this for working so hard, or they say I'm rewarding myself for accomplishing XYZ, but I'm going to be blunt here, that is a stupid and dangerous thought process. You're using an arbitrary justification for why you deserve something, but you don't deserve it, you just want it. Really, you're just trying to justify your own baseless purchases, but this video in this series isn't about what your wants are, it's about what your needs are. It's about what you have to do to survive. You need to survive a lot more than you deserve to get a fancy meal at a restaurant each week or a new outfit every weekend. Because the reality is, this kind of spending can create massive financial problems, especially if you're not tracking it or budgeting it in any way. It also creates massive issues for you if you're financing it through a credit card. But like I said, it's typically also a coping mechanism. It doesn't genuinely make you happy long term, and it also doesn't tangibly improve your quality of life, especially if it's stuff that you don't even use. Let me give you an example from the budgeting video that I linked below. Let's say you tell yourself you spend $50 a week on these things, right? But if you look at your actual spending, what you really truly spent long term, typically you find that you're lying to yourself and you regularly go over that amount by a lot. Like a lot. And that's not to say every single person in the world does this, but of all the people I've helped budget, which is a pretty substantial amount at this point, somewhere around 95% of them had this issue. I also personally did this back when I first started budgeting. So when you combine this overspending compared to what you're telling yourself or what you think you're spending with the effects of compound interest on a credit card, the result is that you're going to put yourself in a very bad financial situation. Things are going to get out of hand, and they are going to get out of hand quickly, and it is going to take you a very, very long time to recover from that. So okay, we have the problem. What is the solution? So glad you asked. First and foremost, use your credit cards responsibly. But really the most important component is don't spend money that you don't have, or if you do use a credit card, pay off the full balance every single month. Do not let any balance trickle over. That is how you accrue a ridiculous amount of interest. Second, stop aimlessly browsing through Facebook Marketplace Marketplace or Amazon or Etsy or whatever other site every time you're bored. Just because you get a push notification on your phone that there's a lightning sale doesn't mean you have to buy that thing right now. And let's say you struggle with impulse control. Let's say you're bad about that, okay? The best thing you can do in that situation is uninstall the app. Block the website, stop going on it. Or if you're the type of person who shops at a physical store, stop going to the store. It sounds really easy, but you'd be amazed how many people screw up that step. Most people that I've seen who overspend at physical stores, they kind of give themselves the self-justification of, oh, it's on the way, so it's not gonna hurt to stop and look. Just don't stop. Keep going home. Don't go out of your way to go there. This kind of seems obvious, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's an easy thing to change, right? This takes a lot of self-awareness of when you are doing these things and being mindful that you're doing them, because you have to stop and admit to yourself on some level that these things are not essential to your survival, they're not going to make you happy, and you don't need them. That takes a little bit of time and a little bit of self-reflection to accept, and again, that is a bit of a challenge for a lot of people. You really need that level of discipline and that level of self-control that you don't just make these impulse purchases. But let's be real, it's challenging. It's deliberately challenging because companies like Amazon spend millions of dollars a year figuring out how to get you to impulse buy things better and faster and easier. They make the process as streamlined as possible specifically because they know you're more likely to spend that way. Yes, Amazon, I am calling you out. Also, Jeff Bezos, please don't kill me. The ideal case here is you want to stop buying these things altogether, right? You want to cut out these purchases, but that said, this video and this series is about making improvements. It's about being better than you currently are. So if you're just looking for a place to start, I would start by setting a very strict budget for every week or every month or whatever period of time works for you. Do not exceed that budget no matter what. And then from there, you slowly reduce your budget to a point that either you're comfortable or ideally you can eliminate that kind of spending entirely, especially if it's something you don't need. As you start to do these things and as you start to buy things less often, you become less dependent on that instant gratification feeling and that dopamine hit. And ultimately, over time, you are able to wane off and eliminate this entirely. You begin to realize you never needed this stuff in the first place, and that really it probably is a coping mechanism for something else that purchasing this was never going to solve. So let's go to the second pillar, right? Entertainment expenses. Now, the same principle applies to entertainment expenses as well. If you're budget constrained, if you're struggling to get by, you can't afford to just go out and do activities. It might be a harsh reality, but it's a reality. You can't afford it. Go-karting, skiing, going to the movies or restaurants, those are not essential to your survival. So from a budget perspective, the ideal case is to slowly kind of wane back on these things and then eliminate them altogether, especially if you're really struggling to get by. And the best way that I found to do that was to set a very strict budget and then gradually lower that budget based on what you're actually able to tolerate. But that's the key word, right? Is what are you able to tolerate? Because in the real world, your budget isn't your only concern, right? So if you have no entertainment whatsoever in your life, you're probably going to be miserable and you probably need something there, but just be conscientious of how much you spend. You have to use a little bit of discretion here because on one hand, you need to cut back to a certain extent or else you wouldn't be here watching this video. But quality of life is a very real thing, and if you're trying to go several years or live long-term with zero entertainment expenses at all, quite frankly, even for the most budget-minded people, that's extremely challenging. Now, stepping back for a second, I said at the start of the video that restaurants are also in the entertainment category, and you might be thinking, oh, well, you said these aren't essential for survival, but I need food to survive and restaurants have food. Well, I also said that this series is about getting the most for your money and reducing the cost for the essentials that you do need to survive. So do you need food? Yes, you need food to survive. Do you need food that is prepared for you by a restaurant? No. No, you don't, because you have alternatives available that are substantially cheaper. And these alternatives are commonly referred to as the grocery store and cooking. What you're really paying for at a restaurant is the convenience of not having to cook or clean up after yourself. But this series isn't about convenience. It's about survival. You need to survive more than you need a convenient lifestyle. And despite what you might currently think, cooking is actually not that difficult. There's plenty of recipes and how-tos online that give you full step-by-step instructions. They tell you all the ingredients and everything everything you need to do to get some really high quality results. There's no reason that you cannot try it on your own. Just know that on average, professionals estimate that it is 4.72 times or almost 5 times as expensive to eat out versus preparing the same meal at home. That's an average. The numbers vary depending on a number of factors of where you are, what kind of food you're getting, but it's anywhere from 2 times as expensive to more than 20 times as expensive to eat out versus preparing the food on your own. So pretty much, no matter how you look at it, there's no situation in which eating out is the right choice from a financial perspective. Cooking at home is substantially cheaper, and that cost really adds up long term, especially if you're going out to eat multiple times per week. Let's go through some examples with actual numbers here, okay? One of the individuals that I helped budget, they said they spent an average of $50 per week making online purchases from Amazon. And they also said they went out to eat 3 times a week as well, which includes fast food restaurants, spending roughly $75 a week on restaurants. So I went through their real credit card history. I looked at their actual spending. The $50 a week they claimed to spend on Amazon was actually $84 a week on average. So the other thing is looking at the restaurant side, that followed a similar trend as well. Their actual spending on restaurants was $127 per week. When I was working with this individual, I knew they were underestimating those values based on their body language, but I didn't expect the difference from what they thought they spent to what they actually spent to be this big. That was a huge disparity. So let's extrapolate these numbers here to give you the big picture of how much this stacks up over time. What I'm going to do is calculate a monthly total and an annual total. So the monthly total is going to be based on 4 weeks a month because all months have a minimum of 4 weeks. And then we're going to use 52 weeks in a year. So these are both based on the weekly totals. So I realize my annual cost isn't 12 times the monthly cost. It's because I'm using the week count instead of anything else. Relax, it's okay, put the gun down. But going back to the numbers of this person I actually helped budget, right? They thought they were spending $50 per week online. Extrapolating that out, that's $200 a month or $2,600 per year. By comparison, their actual spending was $84 a week, which is $336 a month or $4,368 a year on just Amazon purchases. So quick reminder, none of these are big purchases. None of these were like a big TV or like a new refrigerator. These are all trinkets. These are stuff. These are $50 to $100 tiny purchases of just things that they saw and thought were cool. So here they are telling themselves, oh, I got a good deal on this, but then at the end of the year, they had almost $4,400 of stuff that's effectively useless. Going back to what I said before, right? I said set a budget, adhere to that budget. If they had actually adhered to $50 a week instead of spending what they actually spent, that would have saved them $136 a month or $1,800 a year. And again, that's not fully getting rid of the spending, that's literally adhering to the budget that they specified of $50 a week. Looking at the restaurant spending, pretty much the same story, right? They claimed $75 a week, which works out to $300 a month or $3,900 per year. But when their actual spending was $127 per week, that means they spent $508 a month or $6,604 per year on average. So again, even just looking at what they claimed they spent versus what they actually spent an additional $208 a month or $2,700 per year. So like I said, you need some form of food to survive, right? You can't completely eliminate the cost of food. You're obviously going to have to buy groceries instead of going out. But even so, let's go back to the numbers I stated earlier, which is that it is roughly 5 times as expensive to eat out compared to cooking food on your own. Looking at the example I just covered where the person spent $6,600 a year to eat out, if you divide that number by 5, that is what it would cost them to produce the same meal. So if you do that, it means they could have made the same food for $1,320 per year. So just by cooking on their own versus eating out, that means they would have saved $5,280 per year. Now, I don't know what you think, but to me, $5,280 is a pretty significant amount of money. So that's the math for restaurants. But if you do the same math for any other type of entertainment expenses, you probably find very similar numbers. The numbers I used are from one person that I helped budget, but let me tell you, based on the number of people I've helped, that problem and these numbers are not a unique experience. This is a widespread problem and a lot of people make this exact same mistake. So if you're in a position where you want to or need to do these things, that's why I recommend evaluating and addressing these expenses first, this is almost always the heavy hitter as far as people overspending. That is the problem, and for the solution, there's really two approaches here. The first is set a strict budget and adhere to it. That's really the biggest thing you can do here. If you genuinely do not exceed that budget under any circumstances, that could be a game changer for you. Second, which is going to be more challenging, eliminate the expenses entirely. If you're struggling financially, stop going out to eat. Stop making these purchases. Going back to the example that I just gave, if that person actually stuck to $75 a week for restaurants and $50 a week for online shopping, just adhering to their budget, not even fully eliminating it, would have saved them $344 a month, or $4,472 a year. That is almost $4,500 a year just by sticking to their budget in those two categories. That's enough money to cover all of your groceries or your utilities, or that's like a solid car payment with insurance. And that's just adhering to the budget. So going to option 2 of eliminating these things altogether, that saves you a staggering, wait for it, $742 a month, or $9,648 a year. Keep in mind that your numbers are going to vary depending on your prior spending habits, but that number of almost $10,000 a year, that includes when you deduct what you would actually spend on groceries as well. But that should give you some real perspective. This person had an opportunity to save almost $10,000 per year. Literally, the only two things they had to do were stop going out to eat at restaurants and stop buying useless trinkets online. People ask me how I got to where I am financially and how I bought my Dodge Viper. This is literally how. This is it. I just cut out these things that I didn't need, that I didn't truly have to have for my survival. Then with all of those savings, I put it towards my debts, I put it towards the things I did need, and then I built up enough of a cushion over time to get myself into a position that now I have the ability to go out and get the things I do truly want. And with that, congratulations, because you have made it through level 1 of financial sacrifices. If you found this video helpful, consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, or sharing this with somebody else who might find the information useful. All these things help the channel grow, and it increases the likelihood that YouTube puts this information out in front of more people, thereby helping others as well. Here's a link to the next video in the series, but that is all I've got for this episode. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.